I started writing songs that where I wanted things to happen because I was already angry. And then I turned it over and said, you know what? Now it's time to start writing what I want.
Mary's one of my first artists. You know, so it's like she kind of put me on, I put her on. We taught each other a lot. We grew and kind of blew up with each other.
Mary J Blige, the undisputed queen of hip-hop soul, has always been celebrated for her authenticity, her raw, unfiltered ability to channel pain into power, turning personal struggles into anthems that resonate with millions. But behind the Grammy-winning catalog and the iconic image lies a story far more complicated, darker, and deeply entangled with the shadowy corners of the music industry. Mary's journey from the tough streets of Yonkers to the global stage isn't just a tale of triumph, it's a labyrinth of trauma, manipulation, and secrets that could shake the very foundations of her legacy.
What's up, MJV?
What's up, Diddy?
I saw you. We was together last week in Italy.
Born into chaos, Mary was forged in an environment where survival meant hardening yourself to the world. The violence she witnessed as a child, the nights she spent humming to drown out the screams that filled the walls of her housing project, and the betrayal she experienced at an age when most children are just learning to trust, it all left scars. Scars that would later seep into her music, making her the voice of a generation. But those wounds didn't just disappear when the lights came on or the microphones turned off. They lingered, festering beneath the surface, shaping her relationships, her decisions, and her vulnerabilities. By the time Mary crossed paths with Sean Diddy, Combs, then a brash young intern at Uptown Records, she was already carrying the weight of a lifetime of pain. And Diddy, he saw it. He saw the cracks in her armor, the anguish in her voice, and he knew how to package it, how to turn her vulnerability into a product that could sell millions. Together, they created a sound that redefined R&B, blending hip-hop grit with soulful melodies. But their connection wasn't just about music. It was complex, layered, and as some might argue, dangerously codependent.
For the people that want to do it and bring it and give it honestly, you have to have some kind of story, that's real.
Diddy's influence on Mary's career is undeniable. He didn't just produce her records, he crafted her image, amplified her pain, and pushed her to the forefront of a new movement. But what did Mary sacrifice in the process? Some insiders suggest that their dynamic wasn't as straightforward as it seemed. Diddy, known for his relentless ambition and iron grip on his artists, had a way of pulling people into his orbit and keeping them there, often at a cost. And Mary, for all her talent and resilience, wasn't immune to his charm or his control. Their early years together were a whirlwind of success and chaos. Mary's debut album, What's the 411, catapulted her into stardom, but behind the scenes, her life was spiraling. The pressure to deliver, to maintain the raw edge that made her a star, was crushing. And as her personal struggles deepened, so did her reliance on the very people who stood to benefit most from her vulnerability. Diddy was there, always pushing, always demanding, and always holding the reins. Was it mentorship, exploitation, or something even murkier?
You are ignorant, disloyal, ungrateful, and I'm gonna call you a until you start acting like a woman.
Mary's relationship with Diddy wasn't the only storm brewing in her life. Her tumultuous romance with Casey Haley of Jodeci added another layer of volatility to an already unstable foundation. Their connection, passionate and fiery, was as much a spectacle as it was a secret. Industry whispers painted a picture of a relationship marked by intensity and unpredictability, with Mary often caught in the crossfire of her own emotions and Casey's larger-than-life personality. Friends described their bond as magnetic but destructive, a collision of two wounded souls trying, and failing, to heal each other. And then there were the rumors. The whispers that Mary wasn't just a star in Diddy's galaxy, but a key player in a much larger, darker narrative. Over the years, speculation has swirled about what Mary might have seen, what she might have known, and what she might have been complicit in during her time at the heart of the bad boy empire. The parties, the power plays, the unspoken agreements. It's a world where loyalty and silence are currency, and Mary, for better or worse, was deeply embedded in it.
That fancy dog collar that Puff got around your neck and has had around your neck for the past 30 years, it should have been done got tight. It don't feel like a noose, Mary.
As Diddy's empire grew, so did the allegations surrounding him. Stories of manipulation, coercion, and control began to surface, painting a picture of a man who wielded his power with ruthless efficiency. And Mary? She was there through it all. Some say she was a bystander, a victim of the same system that ensnared so many others. Others suggest her role was more active, that she wasn't just a witness to the excesses and abuses of the industry, but, at times, an enabler. Take, for instance, the claims about Diddy's infamous inner circle, the so-called team that helped him maintain his grip on his artists and associates. Over the years, names have surfaced, accusations have been made, and patterns have emerged. And while Mary has largely kept her distance from the fray, her long-standing ties to Diddy have inevitably pulled her into the conversation. Was she just another pawn in his game, or did she hold pieces of the board herself?
Because Puff was in control. P. Diddy, Honeycomb, was in control. Mary J. Blige has turned her back on almost everybody that's ever cared about her.
One particularly chilling thread in this tangled web involves the late Aaliyah, a rising star whose life was tragically cut short. Mary has spoken publicly about Aaliyah's passing, describing it as more than just an accident, hinting at forces beyond anyone's control. Her comments, cryptic, loaded, and deeply unsettling, have fueled speculation about what really happened and who might have had something to gain. And while Mary hasn't named names, her proximity to some of the key players in Aaliyah's story raises questions that are impossible to ignore. Then there's the matter of Mary's personal life, a labyrinth of heartbreak, resilience, and some would argue compromise. Her marriages, her breakups, her financial struggles, they all paint a picture of a woman constantly fighting to reclaim her narrative, to assert her independence in a world that seems determined to exploit her. And yet, even as she's broken free from some of her past entanglements, the shadow of Diddy looms large. Their relationship, fraught with highs and lows, remains one of the most enduring and enigmatic partnerships in music history.
Now we've done 3 others where we've laid out the prosecution case. This time, we're talking specifically, what is Diddy's defense? And we decided to test it with a mock jury, and it is fascinating.
It is absolutely fascinating, keeping in mind that the real jury will be sitting down to do this. The trial starts first week in May.
But perhaps the most damning questions aren't about what Mary endured. They're about what she might have enabled. As allegations against Diddy continue to mount, the spotlight is turning to those who were closest to him, those who might have seen or heard things they wish they hadn't. And Mary, with her decades-long ties to the bad boy mogul, finds herself in a precarious position. Did she know more than she let on? Was she complicit in the very systems of power that nearly destroyed her? Or is she, like so many others, just another casualty of an industry that thrives on secrecy and control? What's clear is that Mary's story is far from over. The queen of hip-hop soul may have built her empire on truth and authenticity, but the truth, as we're learning, is rarely simple. And as the walls begin to close in on Diddy and his associates, the question isn't just what will come to light. It's who will be left standing when it does.
It always feels like that, especially before federal trials, because you get to read the indictment, you have not all, but you have much of what the prosecution is going to be.
But there's something additional.
Of their strategy.
There's something additional here. You're right, that they hear about all of that, but what they're also hearing is these other lawsuits that have been filed by all these civil law firms.
And here's where the cracks in Diddy's world start to resemble a full-on collapse. As the allegations pile up, the picture forming around him isn't just troubling, it's almost cinematic in its scope. The lavish lifestyle, the endless parade of parties, the carefully curated image of a mogul who could do no wrong, it's all unraveling. And the deeper people dig, the more it seems like Diddy wasn't just a participant in the darker side of the industry, he might have been its architect. If there's one thing Diddy has always excelled at, it's control. Control of his brand, control of his narrative, and, as it turns out, control of the people around him. From artists to employees, insiders describe a culture where loyalty wasn't just expected, it was demanded. And for those who stepped out of line, there were consequences. Not the kind you see in contracts or boardrooms, but the kind whispered about in corridors and text messages that disappear after reading. People who had everything to lose, and sometimes even more than that, found themselves caught in his orbit, unable to break free.
You're hearing about all these videos with celebrities, not going to be part of the criminal case. And
the Cassie video.
The Cassie video is going to be part.
Right.
We're going to get to that in a minute with the jury. But what we did was, number one, we showed them the the prosecution's case from one of our documentaries, and then we showed them the defense from the current documentary.
Take the stories about his infamous gatherings, the ones that industry insiders now describe as something far more sinister than just over-the-top celebration. These weren't just about networking or flaunting wealth, they were about power. Power to command, to manipulate, to orchestrate situations that left everyone involved either indebted or incriminated. Witnesses have hinted at scenarios where attendees weren't just guests, but pawns, where their participation wasn't optional but expected. And the worst part? Many of these attendees were people who trusted him, who believed that aligning with Diddy would elevate their careers, not entangle them in a web they couldn't escape. And then there's the issue of the tapes, the rumored recordings that have haunted Diddy's reputation for years. Whispers about private footage taken without consent have circulated for decades. The idea that the man who built an empire on image and spectacle might have used that same obsession with control to gather leverage on those around him isn't just chilling, it's entirely plausible. Some say that these tapes were his insurance policy, a way to ensure silence, in compliance in a world where betrayal is currency. Others argue they were trophies, twisted reminders of the influence he wielded. Either way, the existence of such recordings, if proven, could redefine everything the public thought they knew about him.
There has been no profit motive involved at all. The last word is profit.
He's already rich.
So whether or not he had the freak-offs or he did whatever.
Follow the money.
Well, there is no money
Exactly.
to follow. I mean, the freak-offs aren't okay, the way in which I read it, it's not an illegal business. A freak-off is a freak, or whatever these things are, right? But the profit, that last word actually got my attention because I was like.
But here's where things take an even darker turn. It's not just the accusations of manipulation and coercion that are coming to light, it's the sheer scale of it. This wasn't a one-off incident or a single bad decision. This was a system, a well-oiled machine designed to protect the man at the top while everyone else took the fall. Former employees have started to speak out, describing an environment where silence wasn't just encouraged, it was enforced. ND, as were standard practice, and those who dared to break them faced not just legal threats but personal ones. Careers were destroyed, reputations tarnished, all to maintain the image of a man who, on the surface, seemed untouchable. But the whispers about Diddy's tactics go beyond Andy as an intimidation. Recent reports suggest that his empire wasn't just built on music and branding, it thrived on fear. Multiple sources have alleged that Diddy leveraged private investigators to keep tabs on both his allies and his enemies. These weren't just routine background checks for business deals. Insiders claim these investigators were used to dig up dirt, gather leverage, and silence potential threats before they could speak out. One particularly chilling account involves a former associate who claims that after raising concerns about unethical practices within Diddy's companies, they were followed for weeks, their phone mysteriously disconnected, and their close friends contacted by strangers asking invasive questions.
I think one thing that I haven't heard said at this table yet is bribery. So he probably promised a lot of these people either fame, fortune, riches. Whether or not he delivered, I doubt it, but that's another matter entirely, right? So that's obviously, if he incentivized some of these people in order to participate in all of these things, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Is that a definition, or does that fit a definition of coercion in any way, bribery?
And then there's the raid that shook his Miami mansion earlier this year. Federal agents reportedly uncovered more than anyone expected, not just in terms of physical evidence, but in the connections they're beginning to piece together. Documents, electronic devices, and personal belongings seized during the operation are said to point to a broader network of individuals who may have helped Diddy maintain his control over his empire. Sources close to the investigation have suggested that this evidence could implicate not just Diddy, but several high-profile figures in his circle, creating a ripple effect that could extend far beyond the music industry. Perhaps the most explosive detail to emerge from the raid, however, is the alleged discovery of financial records that paint a troubling picture of how Diddy's business interests were intertwined with his personal life. Investigators reportedly found evidence of transactions that raised questions about how money was moved between his companies and certain unnamed individuals. These transactions, described by one insider as highly irregular, have sparked speculation about whether funds were used to pay for settlements, keep witnesses quiet, or even bankroll the very activities Diddy now stands accused of orchestrating. It's a revelation that could blow the lid off not just his career, but the entire infrastructure of influence he spent decades building.
The big thing that is really interesting, and it's going to be a big problem for the defense if you look at this mock jury, the Cassie video. He is not being prosecuted for it. That's a state crime in California, and the statute of limitations is run. But I am telling you, that video was thunderous for a bunch of these jurors.
And it's not just those who worked for him who are speaking out. Former collaborators, artists who once sang his praises, are now questioning the cost of their loyalty. Many of them were young, inexperienced, and desperate for a break when they first entered Diddy's world. They didn't see the warning signs, didn't understand the price they'd pay for aligning themselves with him. And by the time they did, it was too late. They were trapped, bound by contracts, by fear, by the knowledge that speaking out could mean losing everything. One name that keeps coming up is Cassie Ventura, the artist who spent over a decade in Diddy's orbit. Her recent allegations have sent shockwaves through the industry, not just because of their content, but because of what they represent. Cassie's story isn't just about her, it's about a pattern, a blueprint that others are starting to recognize in their own experiences. The details she's shared about control, about isolation, about being pushed into situations she didn't want to be in, are strikingly similar to accounts from other individuals who cross paths with Diddy. And while her bravery in coming forward has been applauded, it's also raised questions about why it took so long for these stories to surface and how many more are still waiting in the shadows.
We've talked about the fact that there's sometimes videos or photos or what don't get admitted to a case because they're
overly
prejudicial.
Right. This is getting admitted. Both sides.
It's definitely getting admitted.
Both sides agree. It's going to be admissible. The defense has a hurdle to jump. I will tell you that they vote in the end, and the vote may surprise.
But perhaps the most damning aspect of all this isn't just the allegations themselves, it's the way Diddy has responded to them. Or more accurately, the way he hasn't. For someone who spent his entire career controlling the narrative, his silence has been deafening. Sure, his legal team has issued statements denying everything and framing the accusations as baseless, but the absence of a direct, personal response speaks volume. It suggests a man who, for the first time, might not know how to spin the story in his favor. And let's not forget the legal implications. The lawsuits are piling up, and while civil cases are one thing, the whispers about potential criminal charges are another entirely. The involvement of federal agencies suggests that this isn't just about individual grievances, it's about systemic abuse, about crimes that could carry serious consequences. And as more people come forward, as more evidence is uncovered, it's becoming increasingly clear that this isn't going away anytime soon.
You know, there's a short life in
Why do you think that is with the creative side?
Well, because losing out money, you got to take you're going through so much to try and deal with life.
The ripple effects of this scandal are already being felt across the industry. People who once stood by Diddy are distancing themselves, erasing their associations with him in an effort to protect their own reputations. Brands that once clamored to align themselves with the bad boy mogul are quietly severing ties. And fans, many of whom grew up idolizing him, are grappling with the possibility that the man they admired might not be the person they thought he was.
You are literally, it's an unhealthy space. And so eventually you're going to go too far, you know? Who knows what happened to Philip? Who knows what he had to do in order to get to where he was at? There's a lot of things that people do that end up sitting and they can't get over it. And they got to keep getting high, hoping to get it out of their head, you know, but when you lose your man card.
But the real question is, how deep does this go? How many people were complicit either through action or inaction? And how many more lives were affected by the decisions of one man? As the walls close in on Diddy, the spotlight isn't just on him. It's on everyone who enabled him, everyone who turned a blind eye, everyone who stood by and let it happen. And in an industry that thrives on secrecy, that's a reckoning long overdue. So what do you think? Is this the beginning of the end for Diddy, or just another bump in the road for a man who spent his entire career dodging consequences? And what about the others? The artists, the executives, the insiders who stood by and said nothing? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more deep dives into the stories they don't want you to hear. See you in the next one.